Vlog 177 comes your way from Peppermill, Reno, the weekend before Burning Man starts, which means you'll see plenty of RVs around Reno, and plenty of people walking bikes through casinos wearing pajamas. I also cannot air the intro that I recorded outside to start this vlog because of too much wind, and the fact that my Sony camera is more sensitive to wind than any ever created, apparently. It was the rare occurrence where I am at the Peppermill when the San Francisco 49ers are playing a football game. That's obviously due to the fact that it's a meaningless preseason affair, though I am fired up to see them kick things off in the regular season this year after coming so close last season. There was a 10-20 game going on when I got into the Peppermill, but I opted to go for the 5-10 version instead. Those are the stakes that I'd rather play, and I think the lineups are often going to be softer. We fire up the game at about 1:30 with Mr. C on my immediate right. First hand comes when Under the Gun raises to 35, playing 7-handed, and I have Ace, King of Diamonds in the cutoff, and I 3-bet to 100. Folds back around to the original raiser, who thinks about it for a minute, and 4-bets to 260. This is one of those spots that I'd always be curious to see what you guys would do in it. Ace, King offsuit, I think, is a fold here clearly in this game, but I don't think that seeing a flop here with the suited variety is the worst play. So with 535 in, the flop comes 10 high, but with just one diamond. He decides to just open jam all in for $1,000 here, which kind of made me laugh, as I'm probably only going to be calling him when he's beat. Then we get a $35 raise from MP1, and it folds to me in the big blind with Ace, 10 of clubs, and I make the call. With 80 in the pot, the flop is Ace, Jack, Jack, 1 club, and I check. He bets 60, and I'm obviously not folding here. So with 140 in, the turn is the deuce of clubs, giving me a backdoor nut flush draw. I check, planning on obviously calling any bet here with said draw, but he decides to just check back, which leads me to believe that Ace 10 was probably good anyway. But I still wasn't upset about the fact that the Queen of Clubs peeled off on the end, giving me the flush. I bet 125 here, and he doesn't think about it for too long, and makes the call. I show my hand and obviously take the pot down without getting a look at what he had. I pick up Ace Jack and raise to 50 in the low jack, and the straddle calls Under the Gun. With 105 in, the flop is Jack 7-3 all hearts, giving me top pair, top kicker, and the nut flush draw. Under the Gun checks, and I bet 65 here, and he doesn't take too long before check calling. So with 235 in, the turn is an offsuit deuce. I bet 110, and once again, he decides to check call. So with 445 in, the river is another deuce. And now, he decides to bet out. But he doesn't bet much, just $115, and that is obviously a bet that we have to call here, creating a $675 pot. And he says that he just has a 3. So I flip over my hand, and he mucks. I mentioned that Mr. C was in the game, and this vlog happened to be shot on his birthday. It was also the birthday, coincidentally enough, of several more players in our game: Gary from Lyon County, Colette, Mark V. So it was kind of a day to celebrate at the Peppermill Poker Room, and local favorite Jeff asked me to do a shot with him and Mr. C, so who the hell am I to say no to an offer like that? Not that I'd recommend that. After that, I ended up defending my straddle and flopping trip queens, but the guy who raised clearly didn't have anything, as he went out extremely quickly. But he would have something in this next hand. I'm under the gun with 2 red aces, and I make it 30 over a straddle on my left. It folds all the way around to the big blind, who decides to 3-bet to 150. A 5x 3-bet, music to my ears, obviously in this spot. I don't waste any time before coming right back over the top to 325 here. He thinks about it for about 30 seconds before jamming all in for 1,300 total. So that's obviously decent news. We agree to run it twice, and after I saw the first flop, I decided to make a request to our dealer Lisa. Put the other ace out there just for the hell of it. Thank you. Thank you. Maybe all you have to do is ask for things in this game. A technique I'd never thought of until now. The second board goes our way as well, so we win both of them, and a $2,700 pot is headed our way. I was on the wrong side of aces against kings twice in sessions that were not vlogged over the past 2 months, so it's good to be on the right side this time around. This is a mid-session update. I've decided that it's an extremely skillful play to get dealt pocket aces when your opponent gets dealt pocket kings. This is the end of the mid-session update. Then the professor sits down in the game, which means action will be coming. We get a limp, and Mr. C makes it 35 from under the gun. I'm in the +1 position on his left with king, queen of spades, and decide to 3-bet it to 80, hoping to get this heads up with him while in position. The professor, though, decides to come along, cold calling my raise from the cutoff, with Mr. C completing as well. So with 245 in, the flop comes Jack 10-6, rainbow with 1 spade. Under the gun checks, and I bet 150 here. It felt like kind of a must-bet spot to me with such a big draw, but I guess you could ask the question, what hands am I going to get the 2 loosest guys in the game to throw away here? Certainly small pocket pairs are a possibility, but it might not always be the right bet given these 2 opponents. And it shouldn't come as a shock to find out that they would both go on to call me here. So, with 695 in, I was hoping for a spade on the turn, but this was the last spade in the deck I was hoping to get. The 6 of spades. So, I do pick up the flush draw, but now the board pairs. Under the gun checks. I'm in an interesting spot here. I'd hate to bet and get raised huge, so I decided to check, expecting to have to call a decent-sized bet here from one of these 2 guys. I have $2,600 behind, and they both have me covered. So I do check, and the professor decides to just bet it all.
Come on.
A $3,000 wager into a $695 pot. Under the gun folds, and obviously, I fold as well. Kind of a frustrating spot, though, to not be able to see that river in what had all the makings of a really good spot for me once that flop came out there. Then, I decided to call a $30 raise from the hijack when I'm on the button with 8-9 of clubs, and one other player comes in as well. So with 95 in, the flop comes king 6-4 all clubs, giving me a flush. He checks, and knowing that a pre-flop raise or checking usually doesn't mean they're going to be check folding, I opt to bet 55 here. By the way, the one time you know that a pre-flop raise or checking means they're going to be check folding is when you flop quads. Guaranteed they will fold then. Anyway, he doesn't take too long with it and decides to check call me here. So with 205 in, the turn is a deuce, and he checks again. This time I decide to bet 80, figuring that he must not be all that strong. It just seemed natural to think that if he had a big king, he would be betting here. He thinks about it once again for only a few seconds, and check calls me again. So with 365 in, the river is another king. I never felt that it was all that likely that he had a king, so I had to figure out the kind of range to put him on here. I figured pocket queens with the queen of clubs, pocket jacks with the jack of clubs, pocket tens with the 10 of clubs, and maybe the occasional king could all be within that range, but also some hands below all those as well. So I decided to size down with that in mind, betting 140 into this pot, and he snap calls, creating a $645 pot. I show my hand, and he mucks. I then got called for the 10-20 game, but decided to pass on it. That's not always the decision you're going to see me make, but today I felt it was the right play. I also had a very good image in this game, to say the least. As you can see, I'm running quite well. And on the days where you have a good image, those are the days where you want to step on the gas. I then pick up 8-9 suited again in the straddle, and I'm on the button, and 3 guys limp in. Could be a spot where I could squeeze, but in this case, I decided just to check. And with 40 in, the flop comes 8-8-7 rainbow, making me wish that I had squeezed. It gets checked to me, and I decide to make the weakest looking bet imaginable, just putting in $10. 2 of the 3 of these guys check call, and with 70 in, the turn is a king. Again, it gets checked to me, and this time I bet 35. Under the gun calls, and MP1 folds. So with 140 in, the river is a 9, filling me up. It is good to run good sometimes. Then, for the first time in this hand, my opponent decides to bet out, sliding in a stack of $100. I'm obviously going to raise here. I decide to make it 300. He thinks about it for only a second and makes the call, giving us a $740 pot, which is obviously heading our way. I would stay hot. I'd get dealt pocket kings right after that and win a little bit more before getting a river fold and a heads-up pot. So things were going quite well. I'd even win about 100 more, value betting a pair of eights across 3 streets for thin value. I then played a limped pot with king 3 suited and flopped top pair before ultimately going runner straight with a deuce, 4, 5, and 6 on the board. And my river bet got paid off in a spot where top pair may have already been good, but improving to the straight certainly didn't hurt. I'd finally lose a hand, but I did get money in good. I actually raised jacks pre-flop and value bet them on an ace-high board, getting called by a pair of 10s, but lost on the river when a third 10 hit from my opponent. Fortunately, he checked to me looking to check raise, and I just checked it back, and he didn't win any more money. Because come to find out, and a lot of you may not know this, I actually just found it out this week. As a legendary philosopher by the name of Mr. Brent says, you can only check raise when your opponent bets. So fortunately, I checked back and didn't lose any more in that hand. I'd play several more pots over the next hour and a half. Then, a surprising development, and one that you haven't heard me say often on this vlog, occurs. The 10-20 game breaks at about 6:30 p.m., and then the 5-10 game that I was in also broke when several players decided to go play a tournament in the back room. So, my night was over much earlier than normal, booking obviously a nice win. Alright, so the whole day ended up being extremely successful, starting with the fact that Mike Nelson stepped in and said, if everyone agrees, we'll make this a $5 game with a $10 straddle, which is the perfect game. Ended up being kind of the Goldilocks game today, the middle game, which, if you ask me, was the perfect game. And the fact that I ran extremely good, obviously, didn't hurt at all. Booking a win of $1,633. All right, a couple things to do here. First of all, I often like to get viewer feedback in on this section of the vlog. For those who like sticking around till the end, and there was a comment a few weeks ago that was just fantastic. And by the way, if you have any fantastic questions or comments, hang on to them. They might come in handy for you in future weeks. That's all I'm going to say. But for now, the comment that was so great came after I talked about that ridiculous hand in the movie Casino Royale. And the way that Daniel Craig slow rolls the straight flush at the end of that hand. Full house over full house, nut flush, and then straight flush. But anyway, Scott Anderson wrote in, to be fair to James Bond, I would also slow roll someone who tried to kill me with poison just a few hours earlier. I love when viewers to this vlog just bring the heat like that in the comments. So good. So he definitely won the week there when it came to commenting. I want to get to a tweet from maybe the most well-known poker player out there. But before I do that, my favorite form of poker entertainment in terms of watching something on TV is probably when Bart Hansen, my guy, jumps into an actual game and then goes back and records these videos where he analyzes his own play. Now, that's not every video that he does, but he did do one within the past month. I just got around to watching it when he jumped in the game on Hustler Casino Live. It's the ante game, which is often the best game that they do there with the $100 big blind ante. So getting to hear his analysis of his hands that he played in that lineup on that stream was absolutely fantastic. And if you sign up just by clicking the link in the description below, it's a unique link that'll get it to you. You'll get 25% off a basic or premium subscription to Quest Live Poker for life just by going through that link. Now, the tweet that I want to mention came from Daniel Negreanu. And the reason I mention it is because there are probably some young guys watching. And I've talked on this vlog a lot over the years about the concept of playing poker as a profession. Now, I am not here to tell anyone that they should or shouldn't do that if that's what they want to do. I fall into the rarely seen category of guys who could play full-time, might actually make more money if they did, but still decide not to. Generally speaking, what I've seen over the years is that the people who can do it do it and give up the job as well. But I've never wanted to do that. But the thing that I wanted to bring to your attention, if you're one of these young guys who are falling into that category, is what Daniel Negreanu tweeted out. He writes, U.S. tax laws are worse for professional gamblers than anyone else. You owe even if you lose. How's that possible? He writes, take it as a hypothetical. In 2015, you lose $1 million. In 2016, you win $900,000. So you're down $100,000 over the course of 2 years. In 2016, you owe $270,000 or so in taxes for the $900,000 that you won. Businesses can carry forward their losses if they have a bad year, but gamblers can't do that. So you have one terrible year and one good year afterwards. You're going to get hammered by the taxes after that. Now, for obvious reasons, this is much more applicable to those who focus primarily on tournaments, but it's still something to keep in mind one way or the other. Click the like and subscribe buttons and follow me on Instagram at Ben Deach, and we'll see you back here next time.